So making a spring clip, if you look at where it's scored in the middle on one side, I'll wait till everybody, so we'll wait for the front row to grab their spring clip. All right, do you have your, okay, so now you're going to tip it upside down. Okay, there's, all right, so you got the score line. You tip it upside down, you'll see 2 score lines on the back. You need to break along those 2 score lines. Nope, other way, yeah. There you go. Okay, because we're going to make a big letter M, right? For makers. So now you're going to peel the backing off of the double-sided tape. Wasn't scored deep enough. No, yeah, or if you could give her another one. If you just, the person behind you has an extra one. Okay, yeah, score a little bit further. So we take the letter M and we push it together really tight. Now you have to understand, see how I'm crushing the flutes? So this is pressure sensitive adhesive. It needs 15 pounds of pressure in order for it to cure, and it's going to take 24 to 48 hours for it to reach its maximum strength. So you can see how, right? Now you have just a simple spring clip. So sometimes what I will do, so if I have someone who experiences Parkinson's or MS and they have a lot of tremors, right? So I'll take my quick grip clamp and then on my, let's see, do we have another kit yarda? The material kit. Because then I'm going to put Velcro, the material kit that everybody got. Yes, there you go. Yeah. All right. So now what I'm doing with the spring clip is I'm going to put a couple of pieces of Velcro on that spring clip. If I can find my pair of scissors. There it is. All right. So now I can attach it here, or I can attach it here. Now how do I keep that newspaper from falling out, right? How do I suspend a newspaper? So I have a couple of options. One is I can use that Remo 2 tape, but everybody should get a roll of lock lift rubber gripper tape. You can get it at Target, Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart. It was really designed to keep, it's lock lift rubber gripper tape and it's in your handout and you can scan it. So it's under tape section on must-have tapes. So I got a couple of options. If I want to, like let's say the paper is going to continue to slide, well here I could just put it there and you can take newspaper, anything on there. The cool thing is it doesn't hurt your newspaper or your paper. I've also put different sheets on walls. A lot of environments like, this, you're not supposed to put nails into people's walls. So we can put the lock lift rug gripper tape. And then I've had posters up for 5 years, right? And then look at that. It comes right off the wall. Doesn't hurt the wall. What if I experience a stroke? If I experience a stroke and I only have the use of one hand, I can lay this down. Now I can fill this all out and then peel that right off, right? So it stabilizes it. What if I happen to use a wheelchair? And on my wheelchair, I have things on my lap. And what happens on your lap, right? It just keeps sliding off your lap. So put a piece on your thigh, put that, now you can push the wheelchair, right? Because it's going to grip and hold things onto your thigh. What if I couldn't turn pages? Wrap this around the palm of my hand, turn pages. What if I dropped something on the floor and I couldn't pick it up? So a couple of options over here is, I had it with Instamorph, and it telescoped. Yarda, did you see it? You didn't take anything that was sitting over here, right? Ah, here it is. All right. So this has got a magnet on the end. Then I took Instamorph, right, because I wanted something to be able to hook on, right, and pull towards me. This is, you get these at the automotive store. This was this piece of metal, telescoping metal thing, and with a magnet on. This is if you dropped a bolt in your engine, right? Slide that down. So I decided to add some Instamorph to make a little hook. This has got a magnet. Now I can also take my lock lift rug gripper tape, and because not everything we try to pick up is metal, right? So all I have to do is wrap this around, right? And then being able to grip things this way, or using the Remo 2 or double-sided carpet tape. So there's a variety of things you can add onto the end to also grip. So it's coming up with a multi-use reacher gripper, things that will telescope. Because one of the problems with a lot of the reachers that are out on the market is that it takes up too much space. And the reacher is in the broom closet, and you have to push your wheelchair all the way over to the closet, open up the closet, grab the reacher, lay it on your lap, push your wheelchair. So the concept is, can you create some type of multi-use? Hooker, reacher, grabber, sticker to grab and stick and pick things up. Another thing I came up with over here is green wire. So you saw that picture of the green wire with the dice thrower, right? And it was flipping. So I thought I could take a piece of PVC pipe, and then I've got green wire, and this is wire housing that you get at the automotive store. It's just this plastic. So that's what's covering the green wire. And then this is like Tommy tape. So I don't know, let's drop a pen on the floor. I think that would be really good. Or maybe something heavier, I don't know. But now I can pick the pen up because I've just put the Remo around, or the U-glue. So, and it leaves no residue. So it's a nice way to be able to, you know, pick things up. Just something, a low cost, low tech type of reacher. And because it rolls too, you can roll it to get more grip with it. You can bend it into whatever position that you need it to be bent in. All right. So lock line. So I've got this little stand up here, but you can also make a multi-purpose holder with PVC pipe. And I call this the I Hold It stand. I want to show you my new I Hold It stand. You know, it first started off as a way to hold the iPad in terms of vertically. Something simple, low cost, very easy to make. We're using industrial Velcro, which is rated at 12 pounds per square inch. You know, holds it really great. Okay. Well, you know, sometimes people don't like to use Velcro, and so you can also take corner guard and make a little U-mount that just slides in there, and now you have just a track that the iPad drops into. So that's something very simple, right? Or what if you had an iPad in one of these bigger cases, and you don't want to take the iPad out? So here we have the same thing. We've got this U-mount track right there. And we can just slide. It doesn't matter whether it's an outer box case, etc. Also, if we turn it, and the camera's over on this side, what's great is somebody with low vision, right? They can slide this on here. We've got a nice vertical mount here. And now to be able to zoom in on the board. So bringing the iPad up in a vertical position. But wait, there's more that you can do with it. Uh-oh. Spinning, buffering. All right, book holder, a cup holder, scan and read station, a magnifier, tip it on its side. For the iPad, there you go. You got a document holder. Now, if you bend it like that and put your iPhone or iPad on top, you can then have it scan. Right? Just like I was showing you in a previous video. All right, so I want to show you how I put this together. And just the parts for it. So you have an elbow, an NPT connector, a double, and your base, and a track. And you notice I don't have a hammer. And the reason I don't have the hammer, it's the end of the day, so the internet, usually we would say the kids get home from school and then everything drags it down. Oh well. It's very easy. Oh, there we go.
We're ready to stand. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to take our 6-inch piece of 3/4 inch PVC pipe. And we have to tap in this NPT connector. There we go. So that's tapped in there.
In 09.
Excellent. The next thing
We'll just get through this one and then
put these pieces together. So we're going to take a double and pay attention where it says socket end up. We're on the bottom there. And we're going to put the ball end here. And squeeze that. There we go. That's snapped in. Next is we're going to push this in.
So see how I'm pushing it in? I'm pushing it in with my hand, with a palm, and I'm snapping it in over the top.
Push down. There we go. That's snapped in. Now we're going to connect this piece. And set socket up. Ball in here. Line that ball up. There we go. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to mount this on the base here. I'm just going to push it all the way down here.
And I mount everything on my bases with the U-glue pieces that I was demonstrating earlier.
There we go. Down. And then you can see how.
And sometimes I make my tracks out of corner guard, or I'm sorry, corrugated plastic.
Now we can just slide our iPad in. So that's how easy it is. You can watch the other video on things that you can do with this particular setup.
With a pair of scissors. It cuts like butter. Yeah, so I was like, wow. And I find that I can also cut 8 at a time with a ratcheting PVC cutter. And these ratcheting PVC cutters are pretty cool for cutting up PVC pipe. Here we go. So I want to show you. So we expand it, right? Goes click, click, click. Oh, piece of paper in here. but look at how easy it is. So I will put like 8 pieces of corner guard together, and I'll cut it all up with ratcheting PVC cutter too when I'm in a hurry and I want to cut 10 at a time. That's another way. All right. I had these videos. It's called a folder that's called Madison. Well, there it was. Yeah. All right. So this little guy. This.
If I have a hard time turning pages, I can wrap this on the palm of my hand. Got that. And now I can rip a hold of pages and flip through the book. So that's another. Here I'm just grabbing one page at a time.
Oh, this is really cool. So I have this pocket talker here, and I did have a binder clip. So this binder clip, here's my long pocket talker. And the pocket talker, so this is not an FM system, so I wanted to make like a portable PA system. So what I do is I plug the mic in. I unplug this part. I've got a long extension cord, and I'm going to plug that in here. I'm going to put that down at the table. Got my mic over on this end. Then I have a speaker over here. And I'm going to plug that in. So a lot of times you go to workshops, and what they have is they don't have maybe sufficient audio. So I thought I could take one of these industrial twist ties and my microphone and a binder clip, slide that through, and I'm going to clamp that on to my twist tie. And have you ever, the other part is low talkers. What I find is people who experience MS or later stages of ALS, what often happens is they start talking like this, right? And you're like sticking your ear inside of their mouth. So now we're going to try something. So the house system. See, didn't it sound better the other way? No. Amazing, huh? All right, these are 2 pieces of corner guard that when I overlap them, guess what? I can turn them and cut them, right? I can make them into a rocker knife for cutting of bread. So my homemade rocker knives.
Hey everybody, look what I've got here. We have our very own cutter to work on how to cut sandwiches in half when you don't have a lot of hand strength. So we're going to take it here and we can rock it on and cut it. Ready to go for hors d'oeuvres. How fabulous is that? Or we can take it and with a little corner guard we lay down, we can slide it right on by, slip it out there, and voila, you have.
There we go. All right. So this gentleman has ALS and wanted a cell phone to be quickly attached to his wheelchair. And he's just using voice recognition and using Siri with his cell phone. So we showed these. You see that round white thing? That is a drain trap. PVC drain trap from Home Depot. So now you make a little pocket that it slides in. You guys all use the 2-inch today. And you would glue that part in, right?
Really cemented down in there, but you can see how I can lift it up. You can see how it's easy to pull it back and forth. If I had a grasping impairment, right, I can do this motion. So in the next video.
And by the way, before I forget, Laura, a lot of people at break time, they came up to me and asked me about would this whole video that's being recorded, will they, because they want to share it with somebody else, could you explain to them how they can access it afterwards?
Sure.
Yeah. Because a bunch have been asking about, because there's a lot of ideas that I've been sharing, and it's too much to take notes on everything. So if you can watch it again.
Test. All right, I want to make sure. There was a delay yesterday when it would
Oh,
go on.
okay.
So we are videoing both yesterday and today, and then it will be live archived. It'll probably be a month or two before that will be up and going, and it will be uploaded into a learning management system called Teachable. So we will notify you once that is up and ready to share. I will, however, also be following up with some links from our speaker yesterday with some additional resources and things like that. And then, as always, with questions, let me know if you have any.
Great. I didn't want to forget that.
All right, so we are going to make this.
I want you to see how incredibly simple this is to make these scissors.
I'm going to put my hands underneath here, and I want to make sure that the scissors is closed. So I don't cut myself, and then I rotate, and I slide it out. All right, so we're going to be doing some really tight shots here on how to do that with this particular board. So we've already put the score lines in. There's tape on both sides. But we're going to start off with this drawing here. And we're going to make that particular cut. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to take our core cloth, and I see where that silver line is, and I'm going to, there's the partition, so if you can show to the left of that partition. All right, and I'll slide it over to the edge here. Actually, I'm not going to, I'm just going to come down, all the way down until I get to just about the end of that silver line, so I can see that silver line there. End of that silver line. Now what I'm doing on the other side of that partition is I am cutting all the way down. So it's just on the left and right of one of the partitions. So you're not taking off that much. And coming down to the end of the silver line. So about there. Okay. There we go. Now I'm going to take my utility knife. And I'm going to make a score line here, and I'm going to make a score line right here, so you can have all the way over to the side. Right here. Cut those in, and now I'm going to make a score line down to where I cut. There we go. And the same thing over here. There. Now, because I did the score lines here, I can bend this up, and this up. I'm going to take my pair of scissors, and just cut that piece off there, and to cut that piece off, and see how my scissors are laying parallel to the surface, and then cutting it off. There we go. And I'm also going to round this corner off so nobody scratches themselves. Right? And I'm also going to just go ahead and apply that. All right. So the first thing I want to do is I want to remove the backings off of the side. Inside, and we're just going to pull that piece over. And we need to put our 15 pounds of pressure. I'm going to do the same thing with this piece as well. got one shot at this. So I'm going to use my thumb, index finger, and I'm just going to make sure that I flush off this corner. Because once I put it down, I'm not going to be able to put it back up. And actually, I'm going to come over and start on this side. It's got tape. You can see I'm eyeballing that, so that's nice and flush. That's really important. Go to the side that already has the tape. Because, check this out, we have this as our excess leg hangover. So that's why we always have to go onto the side that's already been taped. So now, all I have to do is take my coraflaw and I will cut. There we go. Now, I'm going to take my pair of scissors and I'm going to slide it. And here we go. So I'm noticing this is the part that has to be pushed. Now I can always go take a little bit more off here. That later. But now that this is sliding into this particular groove, I pushed it as far as it can. I need to put a stopper. So I'm using my dual lock. Lining that whole thing up. There we go. That's going to keep the scissors from sliding backwards. That's what that's all about. So now I can close it.
So again, the reason it's designed this size, because it's based upon an 18 by 24 sheet. So I just cut it down at 10 inches, and then 2 inches, 2 inches, double tape on both sides, and then trace the little template. So making these so that we're doing a Makers Fair. This year the National Assistive Technology Makers Fair is being held in Pittsburgh. And people will be making the scissor platforms to take home with them. They'll be making the eye gaze or the iPad holders, etc. So just showing a concept, and everything's all like pre-scored. So I was thinking about when I do these workshops, right? And I show you all these things that you can make very, very quickly, and it's really easy. The lock line, you just snap it together. And so then I'm thinking about this person over here. What's your name? Yeah. Stacy? Okay. So Stacy's like, okay, so where do you get the lock line? And do you get it 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, all of that? So after this workshop, you know, I hope that you'll go back and make some things. But what often happens is that if I were to survey all of you after this workshop in 6 months from now, and I would survey you and I would say, so how many of you made something as a result of attending this workshop? Did you learn anything new? Did you actually make stuff? And to look at, first of all, you're going to only remember, as time goes by, how to make this stuff, right? You're going to keep losing it. If you don't use it, you lose it. But you'll remember that you went to one of these workshops and you remember, you know what, there is a solution out there for that. But you're not going to remember all the parts and everything. And even if I send you the plans, well, a lot of people have to get purchase orders, right? Or they have to, I say, oh, you can build it in 5 minutes or less, $5 or less. But that means that you have to drive to Home Depot, get it, or you have to order it, right? It has to come in. And Home Depot is not going to sell you 1 inch or 5 inches of tape. They're going to sell you a whole roll of tape. And a piece of acrylic. Most places are going to sell you, they won't sell you a 9 by 12. They're going to sell you a 36 or an 18 by 24 or whatever. And before you know it, you don't have $5. Even though, yes, you use $5 worth of materials, you end up having like $100 worth of materials. And then you think, oh, but someday I'll use that. And you put it in the closet. And then you get close to retirement and you open up your door and you're like, oh my God, what have I been hanging on to all this stuff for? So last year we got a grant from the Christopher Reeve Foundation. And it's based upon this whole Blue Apron approach. And so, anybody heard of Blue Apron? Remember, it's like, yeah, or fresh, I forget what it is. But anyways, you get this meal in a box, and it has 1 onion, 2 carrots, a little bit of broccoli. It's not, and then you follow the recipe. So what we were doing was, and we ended up making 1,200 devices. So somebody would come to one of these trainings and they'll say, oh man, I've got somebody with Parkinson's, got a lot of tremors, he just really wants a newspaper, and you showed us this really cool newspaper holder. So they would call me up, and what I would do is I would send the QR code and a box of just the parts, right, that you would need to make the newspaper holder. And so the person would take their phone out, they'd scan the QR code, and they would snap it together. Now, no one had a problem with putting something together for 5 minutes. They could easily do that, watch the video. It was pretty simple. And it ended up saving thousands of dollars because you didn't have to go to your supervisor to get permission to buy this. You didn't have to go get a purchase order, right? You didn't have to go in your car to drive to this place and to drive to that place and to get all of that. You only had to spend 5 minutes. And we looked at 24 hours. Could we ship it overnight to you, or 2 days? We were looking at what was the average time that people with disabilities had to wait for an assistive technology solution. And so we looked at AAC. Anyways, it was almost 6 months for assistive technology solutions when something could have been done in 5 minutes. Or let's say you don't have the materials on hand to do it in 5 minutes. But could you pick up the phone and call? Could you send a text message? And then get the ball rolling so that in 48 hours, you would have the kit to do it in. And it was really, really quite successful and a lot of fun. And so I throw that out there to encourage now. So Laura and I are both work for Tech Act projects. Did you guys get one of the Christopher Reeve grants?
We have not done that. We haven't applied yet.
Okay. So they, every year, there's like the competition, but that's also an innovative way in terms of supplies. Now, I remember working at the independent living centers, and I remember going into people's homes, and we would whip things up. Same thing, Laura, you would whip things up on the fly, right? And having that. And so when we talk about liability, and I want to talk about that, so you've been seeing all of these different ideas, and people say, oh, but you know, my employer will not allow me to make anything for anyone. There's liability. What if that person gets hurt, right? Using that device, uh-oh. So 2 things I want to say. One is about knowledge is power. So what if you could share with that family, here's an idea, look, I went to this workshop, or you have this sheet. You make a photocopy of the sheet and say, well, here's something that you could make, you know, with the scissors. And you are being a conduit of information. You're sharing with them on how they can make it. The other interesting thing is our legal department at the university did a case law, I don't know. Anyways, they did an entire review on what is the liability risk of making devices and giving it to people with disabilities. What is case law or precedents? Is it case law? Yeah. So one was they found that there was no lawsuit ever against anybody who made something for someone. So they looked at, under the Good Samaritan Act, only when you hire me to do something, when there's money changing hands, the moment you the moment you have money going back and forth, there is an expectation that whatever you sell me, it's going to be safe. Whatever you do for me, it's do no harm, right? And so there was, under the Good Samaritan law, the lawyers came back and said, that was a concern about my book, because my book is about make this, make that, blah, blah, blah. And there's a warranty thing that says, you know, nothing's guaranteed that it's going to work for everybody, and you could get hurt, and blah, blah, blah. So I thought that was really interesting. But the other part was, for example, you were talking about in recline, and the first thing that came to my head was, oh, no, you don't want to bump that on the wheelchair because, oh my gosh, if they go recline, boink, right? If the iPad, you know, hit them in the head. There's always these unintended consequences that can often happen innocently, you know, not thinking and all of that. The other part about the industrial twist tie, right? I'm like, oh, look at this industrial twist tie. Look at, you can do this. And then We had this kid that loved chewing and biting on everything. So he starts chewing on the foam. I'm like, oh my God, let's take it away. Because you could aspirate that foam, right? So you're always thinking about, you know, the person. We look at the set framework, right? The person, the student, right? The task, the environment. I like Instamorph. I like PLA plastic because if somebody puts it in their mouth, it's non-toxic. But you want plastic that doesn't break. Like Instamorph in your mouth is not going to break, you know, apart. So you don't want anybody choking. You don't want any, you know, big pieces. So I'm always looking at all the different tools and materials that we use in the environment. The other thing, PVC pipe. PVC is polyvinyl chloride. If you heat it up, and I see people heating up pipe, bending, that is very toxic. That will definitely damage your lungs. You are not to breathe in polyvinyl chloride. There is another material, a chemical. Somebody was talking about shoe glue. It's highly marketed. If you look at that, I always say, if something smells bad, it is bad. Except spinach, right? It's supposed to be good for you, yeah? That's debatable. Okay, so the other part is about dust. So I've been like scoring acrylic and snapping acrylic because I don't want to put it on a table saw, because if I put stuff on a saw, I produce more dust. Then I inhale the dust. So I put a mask on, and even with PVC, when you're cutting, and there's all of this dust, and this dust gets onto your clothes, and you go and you do your laundry. Think about asbestos. Think about the women who did their husband's laundry, who are dying from asbestos exposure, and they never worked in these factories. And the doctors found out it was because they were doing the laundry, and the particles got attached, and they'd shake the stuff out in the laundry room or whatever and throw it in. It was like, wow. So I'm always, as I get older, I look at, is something producing any dust? So the ratcheting PVC cutter, rather than ever using a saw, use something that pinches and cuts gradually. Another thing I didn't show you was that with that clever cutter, it's very interesting, because if I take this clever cutter, so you all used it to cut your pieces, right? But now watch. Watch what happens when I take the clever cutter and I go sideways. I can do some really cool trimming here, right? So I can take more pieces off. So I used to do a lot with epoxy putty. And with the epoxy putty, it'll say, oh, you can sand that, you can tap that, you can drill that. And then I start getting concerned about dust on that and inhaling. Another one was I heat and bend acrylic. So then people start heating and bending Lexan. Lexan is a polycarbonate, very highly toxic. And that needs to be an environment. So when I look at, you know, your question about liability, it's not only liability about the people we serve, right? But it's liability too about people who make. And when I grew up, my dad, I was thinking about welding. And I never wore welding protection. My dad would sometimes flip that over. And now I constantly have these black spots. And I think it's watching that welding equipment. Or all of the things that happen on a farm, right, that we take. Or I remember him cutting with wood. We never used a mask, right? And then looking at, you know, what happens to our lungs after a while. So as I get older, I pass on tips and tricks to make things safer, to reduce or not have dust. Same thing with glues. That's why I don't use glues. 3M, I'm fascinated with the research at 3M and the products. And Crayola, every one of Crayola's products, every one of them are made non-toxic because they work with kids. Kids put crayons and markers and all sorts of stuff in their mouths. And I was like, wow, that is really cool, like looking at that and studying that. So thinking about do no harm to yourself, do no harm to other people, use some common sense as you're making things. A lot of the things that we talked about and that I showed and demonstrated probably have a very low likelihood of somebody getting hurt. But anybody can get hurt with a paper cut, right? There's all sorts of ways that people can get hurt. And I used to have, when I worked at Easter Seals, we had a liability form that everybody would sign that says, we're trying this out, it's never been done before, we're not charging you at all for any of these services. You might get hurt as a result of, we used to modify tractors, we used to put hand controls and lifts on and all of that. And then we'd ask families to sign that, knowing that they're at risk. Do they want to take that risk, an informed risk? Now, a lawyer will tell you, they'll never hold up on court, that you still have to have a liability policy just in case if somebody ever comes back. We're often, I have never been sued, but we do live in a litigious society, and so protecting ourselves. And for those who are really nervous about making anything, then I say to you, that's fine, but you should share ideas. You shouldn't withhold ideas and information and possibilities, and let other people make a decision for themselves if they want to make it or they want to find somebody else to make it for them. So I wanted to make sure that I had time to talk about that particular liability concern. And yes.
Just an analogy to what you're sharing.
Okay.
Just an analogy to all of that is many of you out there provide information about building ramps. So the proper guidelines, the 1:12 ratio, all of that. That's the same thing that she's saying now. So for years we've been giving people a handout on how to build a ramp, and then they go to their family or their local service organization and have that ramp built. So that's the same concept, is taking these ideas just like you would a ramp guidelines and sharing it with them.
The other part is, I think about, remember Boeing, the 737 Maxes are now, all halted because 2 planes have crashed. And I talked to a pilot and they said, whenever there's a plane crash, oh my gosh, they take it really seriously, which they should. And they halt it and they study it and they look at it, and then they send out new information or they redo the software or whatever. Same thing in assistive technology. As we're building things, we learn about new materials or new things, or oh, you shouldn't be using that. Or we find out that fiberglass is supposed to be now the new asbestos. Stay away from anything with fiberglass. So it's like, wow, I didn't know that. So constantly learning. Or pinkboard. I do a lot with pinkboard. Well, you should never heat up pinkboard. That's really toxic. So we learn it, we share it, and there's new materials coming out all the time, which is so fascinating. So I would hope that you would browse a Home Depot, browse a Lowe's, periodically, go up and down the aisles, pick things up, look at how they're made, be curious, look at things upside down, keep turning things upside down, inside out, backwards, see what you can come up with. And people say, all of these different ideas, every one of them are inspired by someone with a particular disability who comes to me with a particular challenge. And you know what? I don't have the answer right then and there. Sometimes I'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'll I got to go down to the dining room table and make it. And my husband will say, what mousetrap are you working on now, right? Because I'll dream about it and I'll oh my gosh, I got the perfect solution. I'm going to go down and I'm going to build it. So it's really fun. And the joy is when you then deliver it or give it to the person or make it for the person right on the spot, and that person can finally do a particular task that they couldn't do before. That's the real joy. So in closing, this whole thing about make stuff and love people, or make love and stuff people.
See, if I was going to make something and I'd be afraid my boss would say no, I would just not ask him.
Not ask your boss.
Just hope I don't find out.
Just not ask. There was a whole paper on, have you ever heard of the underground OT? Okay, so the underground OT, this is very interesting, was the fact that all of the stuff that I was showing you, none of that is billable under Medicare, Medicaid, your health insurance. all of that I just showed you this today is all considered not medically necessary. In fact, 80% of assistive technology is considered not medically necessary. Yet, it's important to live independently, it's important to recreate, to work, to educate, all life functions, right? So when the people say, well, then what does insurance pay for? Well, insurance pays for wheelchairs, and insurance pays for AAC devices, and some mobility aids. But all these other, like magnifiers and stuff, they don't pay for. And we live in a time of limited resources, right? And limited time. So thinking about really fast ways of making things quickly, very simply, on the fly, with everyday items, everyday materials, and looking at it differently, I think is the route to go. Any last minute questions? Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for getting me here. Yeah.